I never thought a single night could change everything and nothing all at once, but that's exactly what happened with me and Jamie. The weird part? We both agreed never to talk about it again. Not because we regretted it, but because some things, apparently, are better left unsaid. Which, of course, made me wonder every single day, since what the hell we were actually trying to hide from ourselves. It all started on one of those brutally ordinary Friday nights that make you question your life choices. I was working a dead-end retail job downtown, and Jamie was this guy I'd known for a couple of years, mostly through mutual friends but never really close, until that night. He was tall, with this easy smile that somehow made you feel like he wasn't just looking at you, but right through all the crap you tried to hide. Honestly, before that night, I'd mostly pegged him as the kind of guy who's too cool for serious stuff, the charming guy who just breezes through life without a care. Turns out, I was only half right. We'd run into each other at this tiny dive bar that neither of us had been to before, tucked away in a part of the city that felt like it was forgotten by time. I was there because my friends bailed last minute, and Jamie was there because he claimed the place had the best jukebox in town. The bar was dim, with peeling paint and a sticky floor, and the kind of place where everyone knows your name or at least your business, whether you want them to or not. At some point, after a couple of drinks and way too much bad music, we found ourselves sitting side by side on a cracked leather bench, sharing a cigarette outside, even though it was freezing. That's when the conversation started. Really started. About everything and nothing. Life, regrets, the kind of stuff you pretend you're over but secretly aren't. There was this honesty between us that I'd never felt before, like the world narrowed down to just the two of us standing in the cold, and everything else blurred. And then something shifted. I don't know if it was the way he looked at me or the way my heart suddenly felt like it was trying to escape my chest. But suddenly, without a script or any warning, we kissed. It wasn't some perfect movie-style moment. It was messy and maybe clumsy, with fumbling hands and a taste of whiskey and cigarette smoke. But it was real. And after that, everything felt different. Like we'd crossed some invisible line neither of us knew was there. The next morning, we met up, both pretending like it was just another night out. But then, Jamie said something that stopped me cold. Let's just not talk about last night. No awkward apologies, no awkward questions, just a pact to pretend it never happened. Which was strange because, for me, it had happened in a way I couldn't ignore. But Jamie's eyes were serious, almost guarded, and I could tell this wasn't about embarrassment or a mistake. It felt like there was something bigger we were both avoiding. So here I am, weeks later, stuck replaying that night over and over in my head, wondering what kind of secret we made a deal to keep, and why it feels like the silence between us is louder than any conversation could ever be. Because some nights change you, even if you swear you'll never speak of them again. And somehow, I'm pretty sure that night with Jamie is one I'm never going to forget. After that night, everything felt a little off-kilter, like the world had shifted under my feet and I was still trying to find my balance. I kept waiting for Jamie to say something, anything, about what happened, but he didn't. He acted like we were just friends who'd shared a weird night out. The kind of friends who didn't make eye contact too long or linger over texts. Honestly, it was confusing. The silence between us wasn't peaceful. It was tense, like a secret we both carried but never unpacked. I tried to pretend it didn't affect me. I told myself it was just a one-off thing, a drunken mistake we both agreed to forget. But pretending is exhausting, especially when you're around someone as magnetic as Jamie. Seeing him wasn't easy anymore. There was this weight behind his eyes, like he was holding something back, and I was desperate to know what it was. But every time I opened my mouth to say something about that night, the words caught in my throat. One afternoon, about a week after the pact, I found myself at our usual coffee spot, the one near the library where we'd bumped into each other a few times before. Jamie was there already, sitting alone with a black coffee and his laptop open. I wanted to walk away, but my feet moved toward him like they had a mind of their own. "Hey," I said, sliding into the chair opposite him. He looked up, blinked, and gave me a small, tight smile. "Hey." We sat there in this awkward silence for what felt like forever. I kept fiddling with the strap of my backpack, trying to think of something casual to say. But the weight of everything unsaid was like a wall between us. Finally, Jamie broke the silence. "You've been quiet lately." Understatement of the year. "Yeah, I guess I have." He nodded like he already knew what I was really thinking but didn't want to push me. "Look, about that night, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make things weird." Weird? That was putting it mildly. "It's not weird," I said, surprising myself with how honest I was suddenly feeling. I don't get why we can't talk about it." Jamie's eyes flicked away from mine, and I caught this flicker of something. Fear, maybe? "Because some things don't fit into neat conversations," he said quietly. "Not yet." I wanted to ask what that meant. I wanted to peel back that layer he was hiding behind, but instead, I just nodded. Okay. The thing about Jamie was that he wasn't easy to read, and maybe that's what made everything so complicated. He was a puzzle, but not the kind where you feel satisfaction when all the pieces click together. More like one where you keep finding new pieces and realizing you understood nothing before. Over the next few weeks, we fell into this strange rhythm. We'd hang out, laugh, talk about everything except that night. It was like we were dancing around a fire, too afraid to get burned, but also unwilling to back away. Then, one night, everything shifted again. We were at a friend's birthday party, this crowded, noisy place filled with people I barely knew, and music that gave me a headache. Jamie was across the room, leaning against the wall with that same calm, almost untouchable air he always had. I found myself watching him more than the party, and before I knew it, I was walking over. "Can we get some air?" I asked, hoping he'd say yes. He smiled, a real one this time, and followed me outside. The cold night hit me like a slap, but Jamie didn't flinch. We stood there in the sidewalk glow of a street lamp, the sound of muffled laughter and music drifting out from the party behind us. "I don't want to pretend anymore," I said, my breath fogging in the cold. "You can't just act like that night didn't mean anything." Jamie was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me, and for the first time since that night, I saw something raw in his eyes. "It did mean something," he said. "It means a lot, but I'm scared." "Scared of what?" I asked, my voice softer now. "Messing this up," he admitted. "Messing up us." I took a step closer. "We're already here, Jamie." "Whatever this is, we'll figure it out. But we have to stop pretending it didn't happen." He hesitated, then finally nodded. "Okay." That night, we didn't make a pact to keep quiet. Instead, we made an unspoken promise to try to be brave enough to face the messiness and uncertainty. And somehow, just saying that out loud made the silence between us feel a little less heavy. I don't know what comes next with Jamie, but maybe that's okay. Because some nights, some moments don't come with a clear map or a neat ending. They just come, and you hold on tight and hope you're not letting go too soon. After that night outside the party, things between Jamie and me took on this weird, fragile new shape. It wasn't like everything instantly became perfect or easy. No, it was more like we were both poking at a bruise, careful not to hurt each other, but also unable to ignore the ache underneath. The next few days, I couldn't stop replaying his words in my head. "I'm scared of messing this up." I wondered what that meant for him. Was he scared because he'd never felt this way before? Or was there something else, something he wasn't ready to share? My gut told me it was the latter, but I didn't push. Not yet. One Thursday evening, Jamie texted me out of the blue. Just a simple, "You around?" But my heart jumped reading it. I told him I was home, and pretty soon he showed up at my apartment, looking a little worn out, but smiling that familiar, soft smile. We sat on my couch, neither of us saying much at first. The silence was comfortable this time, like we were both waiting for the right words to land. Finally, Jamie broke the quiet. "I haven't been honest with you about something." I braced myself, the tension in my chest tightening. "Okay, I'm listening." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The night we kissed? It wasn't just a random thing for me. I've been dealing with a lot, Stuff I don't usually talk about. My family, my past relationships. I guess I've always been good at putting on a front. Acting like everything's fine, even when it's not. I nodded, encouraging him to keep going. I'm not used to opening up like this, he said, looking down at his hands. But with you, it feels different. Scary, but different. That's why I wanted to make the pact. Not to avoid the night, but to avoid rushing into something I wasn't ready for. I felt a surge of warmth that mixed with relief. Thanks for telling me. I didn't want to push, but I needed to know. He smiled, that same easy smile, but softer now. I guess we're both scared in our own ways. We spent the rest of the night talking about fears, past mistakes, hopes we'd never voiced out loud. For the first time, the walls between us came down, brick by brick, and it was messy and beautiful all at once. Over the next few weeks, I watched Jamie start to change, or maybe just show more of who he really was. He wasn't perfect. He got anxious when things felt too real, and sometimes he'd pull back when I wanted to get closer. But he was trying. And so was I. One Saturday, we went for a walk through the park near my place. The air was crisp, the kind of spring day that feels like the world is waking up. We were just talking about dumb things, laughing about some ridiculous inside joke, when Jamie suddenly stopped and looked at me. "Can I ask you something?" he said, eyes searching mine. "Anything," I replied. "Do you think we could be more than this?" He gestured between us. The question hung in the air, weighty and electric. "I want that," I said honestly. "But only if you're ready." He smiled, that smile that could melt the coldest day. "I think I'm ready to try." It wasn't a grand confession or a perfect moment. It was just two guys, figuring it out one step at a time. No fairy tale, no fireworks. Just the quiet hope that maybe, this time, we wouldn't have to make any pacts to keep our feelings hidden. That night, as Jamie walked me to my door, he stopped and pulled me in for a hug. It was tight and warm, like a promise. When he pulled back, he whispered, "No more pacts. Just us." And for the first time since that night in the bar, I believed him. After Jamie said, "No more pacts. Just us," I thought maybe the hardest part was over. But, as I've learned, feelings rarely come with neat endings. That night felt like a fresh start, sure, but it also peeled back a whole new layer of uncertainty neither of us was ready for. The days that followed were a mix of excitement and awkwardness. Suddenly, every little glance or touch carried this weight, like we were both trying to figure out how to navigate uncharted territory. Before, we could laugh off the silence or pretend nothing happened, but now, everything seemed amplified. One morning, a few days after that walk in the park, Jamie invited me over to his place. He said he wanted to cook, and I couldn't say no. His apartment was cozy, filled with books and plants, the kind of place that felt like him, calm but full of life. We spent the afternoon chopping vegetables and debating whether cheese belongs on pasta. It does, obviously. At some point, I caught him watching me with this soft look that made my heart stutter. I wanted to say something, but words tangled up inside me. After dinner, we settled on the couch, a quiet kind of comfort settling between us. That's when Jamie surprised me by reaching for my hand. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't say anything after that, just squeezed my hand gently. And in that silence, I realized that sometimes connection isn't about what's said, it's about what's shared without words. But not everything was easy. There were mornings when Jamie seemed distant, like he was holding something back again. One evening, after a long day at work, I found him sitting on his balcony, staring at the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts?" I asked, joining him. He shrugged, then finally said, "I'm scared, okay? Scared that this us won't last, that I'll screw it up." I sat close, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "Hey, no one gets this perfect. We just do what we can. Together." He leaned into me, and I could feel the tension easing from his body. "Together," he echoed. Those moments mattered. They grounded us when the past tried to creep back in. Because Jamie's history wasn't just a story he'd told me. It was a shadow that sometimes stretched too long. One night, out of nowhere, he confessed, "There's something I need to tell you. Something about my ex." My stomach flipped. I'd never met his ex, and hearing that name brought up all kinds of questions I wasn't sure I was ready for. She was part of the reason I built walls, Jamie explained. I thought I was done with love, honestly. I didn't want to risk feeling that hurt again. I listened, feeling the raw honesty in his voice. "Thank you for trusting me." He looked at me, eyes shining. "I want to be better, for us." That night, lying next to him, I realized that love wasn't about flawless beginnings or easy paths. It was about two messy, scared people choosing each other anyway. Choosing to be brave enough to face the unknown. Weeks turned into months, and we kept building something fragile but real. We talked more, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes deeply. We had our fights and makeups, our moments of doubt and clarity. And through it all, that night, the night we made that weird, unspoken pact, not to talk about what happened, it became less of a secret and more of a starting point. A reminder that sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones worth having. Because with Jamie, I learned that love isn't about perfection or silence. It's about showing up, even when it's scary, and daring to hope that maybe, just maybe, it's enough. It wasn't like suddenly we had everything figured out. Far from it, actually. Being with Jamie felt like trying to solve a puzzle while the pieces kept shifting under your fingers. Some days, I'd wake up and feel like I was on top of the world. Other days, I'd wonder if I was crazy for even hoping this could work. One Saturday, a few months in, Jamie invited me to an art show downtown. He wasn't much into the artsy scene, but he said it was something he wanted to try, not just for himself, but with me. I was excited, mostly because it felt like he was making space for us in parts of his life I hadn't seen before. The gallery was pretty small, tucked between a tattoo parlor and a coffee shop. We wandered through, watching people admire paintings and sculptures, while Jamie kept stealing glances at me, like he couldn't believe I was actually there. And honestly, I felt the same. At one point, we found ourselves in front of this abstract piece that looked like a tangled mess of colors and lines. Jamie tilted his head, squinting at it. "What do you see?" I asked. He shrugged. "Chaos, maybe? But also something trying to break free." I smiled because, without realizing it, he'd just summed up how I felt about us. We ended up sitting on a bench outside the gallery, the city buzzing around us. "Do you ever wish things were simpler?" I asked. Jamie laughed softly. "Every damn day. But maybe simple isn't always better. Maybe it's the messy stuff that's worth fighting for." I nodded, taking his hand in mine. "Yeah, I want to fight for us, even when it's hard." That night, as we walked through the quiet streets, I could feel the distance between us shrinking. Not that it was ever huge, but the kind of distance I'm talking about is the one built from fear and uncertainty. The kind that makes you hold back even when you want to dive in. But of course, nothing in this story comes without complications. Around that time, I started noticing Jamie pulling away again. Small things. He'd cancel plans last minute or seem distracted on the phone. When I asked, he'd brush it off, say he was just stressed with work. I wanted to believe him, but the gut feeling that something else was going on wouldn't let me rest. One evening, after a particularly long day, I showed up at his apartment unannounced. The door was slightly open, and I stepped inside, calling out his name. Jamie was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, with this look that made my stomach twist. "Hey," I said softly, trying not to startle him. He looked up, tense. "Hey, didn't expect you." I sat down beside him. "What's going on?" He sighed and looked away. Then, finally, he said, "It's my ex. She's back in town." My heart sank. "Back? Like for good?" Jamie nodded. "Yeah. And it stirred up a lot I thought I'd buried. I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid it'd scare you off." "Jamie, you don't have to deal with this alone," I said, squeezing his hand. "We're in this together." He looked at me, eyes full of gratitude and something else. Fear, maybe. "It's complicated. She and I have history, and it's not all bad. But it's messy, and honestly, I don't know how to handle it." "Then let me help," I said. "We'll figure it out, step by step." That night, lying in his bed, I realized how much I wanted to be there for Jamie. Not just the easy parts, but the messy, complicated ones, too. Because real love isn't about skipping over the hard stuff. It's about holding on tighter when things get rough. The days that followed were a test. Jamie was quieter than usual, sometimes distant, but he didn't shut me out completely. We talked more, sometimes awkwardly, about boundaries and feelings, and what we both needed. And in the middle of that chaos, something shifted again. Not in some big, dramatic way, but in small moments, like when Jamie reached for my hand during a late-night movie, or when he smiled genuinely at a stupid joke I made. One afternoon, we found ourselves sitting on the roof of his building, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of orange and purple. Jamie rested his head on my shoulder, and I felt this swell of hope. "We might not have it all figured out," he said quietly, "but I want to keep trying, with you." I smiled, heart pounding. "Me too, Jamie. Me too." Maybe love isn't about having all the answers, or never feeling scared. Maybe it's about leaning into the uncertainty together, and daring to believe that some nights, no matter how complicated, they're worth holding on to. Things with Jamie settled into this delicate rhythm, a mix of closeness and distance that, honestly, sometimes left me feeling like I was on a tightrope without a net. We were trying, that much was clear. But trying doesn't mean it's easy. One Saturday morning, I was at his place, helping him make pancakes, an excuse to distract ourselves from whatever lingered in the air. Jamie was flipping a pancake when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression tightening just a little. "It's her," he muttered, pocketing the phone. I didn't press, but I could tell it was the ex again. The one who'd come back into his life and stirred up all that old, messy stuff. I wanted to be patient, but my mind started spinning with questions and doubts I didn't dare say out loud. Later, as we ate breakfast, Jamie seemed quieter than usual. I finally asked, "Do you want to talk about it?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's complicated. She wants to meet up. I haven't decided if I should." The words hit me harder than I expected. "Are you going to?" Jamie shrugged, but his eyes avoided mine. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I need to face it, to close that chapter for real. But I'm scared it'll open wounds I'm not ready to deal with." I nodded slowly, trying to steady the churn of emotions inside me. "Whatever you decide, I'm here." He looked at me then with a fragility that made me ache. "Thanks, that means a lot." The days that followed were tense. Jamie's mood swung like a pendulum. Sometimes open and warm, other times distant and guarded. I felt like I was watching him wrestle with ghosts I couldn't reach. And, despite all my efforts, the silence between us started to grow. One evening, I found myself at his apartment after work, hoping to bridge the growing distance. Jamie was sitting on the couch, staring at the floor, and when he saw me, he offered a weak smile. "Hey," I said softly, sitting beside him. He ran a hand through his hair. "I met her today." My heart slammed against my ribs. "How did it go?" He looked up, eyes tired but honest. "It was hard. We talked a lot. Some good, some painful. But I think I needed to hear those things out loud." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Do you feel better?" Jamie hesitated. "I don't know yet, but I do know I want to focus on what's real. On us." Hearing that made something inside me thaw. Despite the mess and the uncertainty, Jamie was choosing this, choosing me. And maybe that was enough for now. We spent the rest of the night talking, really talking, about fears, hopes, and what we both wanted moving forward. It wasn't perfect. There were stumbles and silences, but it felt honest. A few weeks later, Jamie surprised me with tickets to a small concert. We sat close in the crowded venue, the music washing over us like a balm. Halfway through the set, he leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for sticking around." I smiled, resting my head against his shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere." Walking home under the city lights, hand in hand, I realized that love wasn't about being fearless or flawless. It was about showing up again and again, even when the path was uncertain. With Jamie, I was learning that sometimes the best kind of love is the one you fight for, the one that's messy, complicated, and real. And if that meant facing hard truths and uncomfortable conversations, then so be it. Because in the end, the silence we once promised to keep, it wasn't about hiding what happened that night. It was about finding the courage to face it and everything else together. It's funny how life throws you curveballs when you least expect it. Just when I thought Jamie and I had found some steady ground, the past came back to test us all over again. Not long after that concert, one of those nights where everything felt like it might actually work, he got a call that changed everything. I was at his place when he answered. The way his expression shifted from calm to something fragile and guarded was the first clue that this wasn't just a casual chat. "It's my sister," he said quietly after he hung up. "I need to go out of town for a few days. Family stuff." I nodded, trying to hide the disappointment because I just started feeling like we were really, truly connecting. But I knew family was important to him, probably more complicated than I'd ever fully understand. "Want me to come with you?" I asked. Jamie shook his head. "It's something I have to deal with alone, but I'll be back soon." The next few days felt empty. The kind of empty where you realize how much someone fills your space just by being there. I kept myself busy, but the silence in his apartment was deafening. When Jamie finally got back, there was this weight about him. Not the lightness I'd hoped for, but a heaviness that clung to his shoulders. We sat in the kitchen, neither of us saying much. Finally, he broke the silence. "My sister's going through a rough patch. It's brought up a lot of old wounds in the family, stuff I thought I'd buried." I listened, wanting to say the right thing, but knowing sometimes the best thing is just to be there. Jamie looked up, eyes searching mine. "I've been scared this whole time, scared that if I open up, I'll lose myself, that I'll mess this up, us." I reached across the table, taking his hand. "Jamie, love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when you're scared." He squeezed my hand, a small smile breaking through. "I'm trying. For us." That night, we talked until the early hours, peeling back layers we hadn't dared touch before. It was exhausting but necessary, like clearing out the old to make room for something new. In the weeks that followed, the tension between us began to ease. There were still moments of doubt and distance, but we faced them together. Jamie started sharing more about his family, his fears, and his hopes. And I shared too, my insecurities, my dreams, the parts of me I usually kept locked away. One rainy evening, we found ourselves curled up on the couch, the sound of raindrops tapping against the window like a quiet soundtrack to our conversation. "Do you think we're really ready for this?" Jamie asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at him, the man who'd become my anchor in the chaos. "I think we have to be. Otherwise, what's the point?" He smiled, leaning his head on my shoulder. "Yeah, what's the point?" Life wasn't suddenly easy. We had arguments, misunderstandings, moments where it felt like we were back to square one. But each time, we found our way back. Because love isn't about never stumbling, it's about picking each other up, again and again. One night, as we lay tangled in sheets, Jamie whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I kissed his forehead, feeling the truth in his words. "I'm not going anywhere. Not now, not ever." And in that moment, I realized that the pact we made that first night, the one to never talk about what happened, wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning, a messy, beautiful beginning filled with fear, hope, and the courage to finally say yes to something real. Over time, the knot of uncertainty between Jamie and me slowly began to loosen. There was no magic fix, no sudden breakthrough that made everything perfect. Instead, it was the small things, showing up when it was hard, choosing honesty even when it scared us, and learning how to hold space for each other's fears without judgment. Those moments added up, and with each one, I felt us grow closer in a way neither of us expected, but both deeply needed. One evening, a few months after Jamie's family visit, we found ourselves walking home from a quiet dinner. The city around us was soft with the glow of streetlights, the air cool but comfortable. Jamie reached for my hand without thinking, and I squeezed back, realizing how natural it all felt. The touch, the silence, the way we fit together in that moment. He stopped and looked at me, eyes steady and calm. I've been thinking a lot about that night, the one we promised never to talk about. I swallowed, heart pounding, but feeling ready. Me too. Jamie smiled, the kind that reaches his eyes and makes everything feel a little lighter. I'm grateful for it, not just for what happened, but because it made me realize I didn't want to keep running from how I feel. From us. I nodded, the weight I'd carried for so long finally lifting. I'm glad we didn't stay silent. It was scary, but worth it. We stood there for a moment, the city bustling softly around us, and I felt something settle inside me, a quiet certainty that, no matter what came next, we were in it together. Later that night, as we lay side by side, Jamie reached over and took my hand again. No more packs, just us. I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. Just us. And in that simple promise, I found everything I'd been searching for. Hope, trust, and the courage to keep choosing love, even when it's messy and uncertain. Because some nights don't just change you, they open the door to something real, and that's worth holding on to.